On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:07. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here on this busy Friday morning. We're going to finish up your week strong and then launch you into the weekend. Some of you have kids who are about to experience spring break.
Oh, yes.
So we're
raising my hand right here.
Yes, exactly. When I say some of you, I mean Patrice. And so we're launching into your spring break festivities as well. Joining us at 6:35, Brenda Thiam, running for the 6th Congressional District in Maryland for that Republican nomination. That is Patrice Onwuka. And I am alongside her. My name is Larry O'Connor. Good to see you, Patrice.
Happy Friday, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
It is a Friday, but you're working very hard if you're a congressional staffer because
you've
got a lot of pages to read through right now on behalf of your member. I don't know. Some interactions with your parents always leave an indelible mark on you. And I will never forget a conversation. I think I was 15 or 16 years old, and I was trying to implore my father to lift my curfew a little bit more so I could stay out later. And he was very generous on the weekends. It was Southern California. It was the 80s, and I was able to stay out till 2. But, some of my...
A.M.?
Yeah.
What?
What are
you doing after even 11 o'clock?
Well, my dad asked the same question, and I said, my other friends don't have a curfew. They can stay out late. And he said, nothing good ever happens after 2 a.m. And
I would move that up, but yes.
When I thought about that, I was like, knowing what my buddies and I were going to do, I was like, yeah, you're right. Nothing good. All right. I can't argue with that. Well, if you take the old adage that nothing good happens after 2 a.m., that this certainly probably relates to the minibus bill that was presented last night at 2:35 in the morning.
Wow.
It's over 1,000 pages. It's worth $1.2 trillion of tax dollars we don't have. And one must wonder, how bad is this thing? What's in there that they're trying to hide and jam down our throats at the last minute? I'm hoping Jon Schweppe has some answers to that. He's the Director of Policy and Government Affairs at American Principles Project, and something tells me this thing is chock full of stuff that violates our American principles.
Well, Larry, it is not going to be a fun bill. I think as people are...
Not as fun as me staying out until 2 in the morning in Newport Beach, California.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, we're never going to enjoy one of these minibuses when we have divided government, and that's just the reality. I think you look at it. I think Speaker Johnson and company did get a few wins, but ultimately this isn't something that we're going to enjoy voting for. And I get where a lot of the folks are who are objecting. I saw Congressman Chip Roy even calling out conservative groups saying that they needed to voice opposition.
Well, thank you. You sort of beat me to the punch there. He did specifically say, we got all these conservative principle groups. I don't think he meant to name that. I didn't mean American Principles Projects. But he meant a lot of groups that are interested in conservative values that go well beyond just taxing and spending, which is also a conservative value. And he said, "You're all silent. None of you're saying anything. Why aren't you standing up with me and objecting to this?" And so I was going to ask you, Jon, to go ahead and give us your answer. Why aren't you?
Well, I'll tell you. We look at this. We worked with the House GOP throughout the appropriations process. We obviously wanted to get a lot of these riders into the bill, some of which are there, a lot of which, did not make it in. But, we look at this through the lens of practical politics, right? And the reality here is this is what's going to happen if we shut down. First, folks like Chip Roy will get 10 days of media hits on Fox News. And I think for some people that's a win, right? That's ultimately true. But number two, nothing will ultimately change in the bill. And then 3, Republicans will capitulate and vote for the bill. And finally, what happens at the end of this? Well, Republicans are going to lose 5 points on the generic ballot. Like, that's just how this is going. I mean, I got started in this movement in the Tea Party. I've been through a bunch of shutdowns. If we don't have a real focus on what we're going to, fight on, what we're going to do it for, maybe if we were doing it specifically on the border or something like that, maybe you could have a win. But we have to recognize what we're up against, which is every major institution stacked up against us. And I just, I look at Speaker Johnson here, who is a movement conservative, who is a guy we know is with us. And, he's been dealt, I think, a bad hand. I mean, he literally has 2-7 offsuit. And there's folks right now who are saying, go all in, Mike, go all in. And the Democrats have a full House. They're going to crush us. Like, we're going to lose if we do this. So I'm sympathetic where people are at, but I just think it's bad political strategy.
Well, Jon, I mean, you're raising a point about the fact is we've seen the Republican majority shrink over the past year, and so the such a slim majority means that there's a whole it forces, I think, conservatives to do a lot more of bipartisan agreement than they probably would like. But, I think, on a separate track, but still related, is just when we think about the tax side of this. So you've got coming up next year, the end of the Trump tax cuts, which I think everyone cheered, loved, and want to see extended. And at the same time, you have some expiring tax provisions. Talk to us. We're hearing that, things like the child tax credit, which is a conservative idea, by the way, is facing scrutiny. It's so interesting when we're talking about how do we ensure that Americans have some relief right now, can afford things, don't see tax increases, and all of this plays into this conversation about the budget and the spending, but also the tax piece. Talk to us about the kind of the tax side of this and the tax bills that are looming too.
Yeah, I mean, that's been really disappointing too. That's a bill where, again, Johnson, Jason Smith, and on House Ways and Means worked hard to get a good bill across that would extend some of the important business provisions, that would extend the child tax credit, and we're seeing it killed on the Senate side by Republicans, which again makes no sense. As you said, Patrice, I mean, this is a Republican policy, and we're handing it on a silver platter to the Democrats. And I've heard, this bill passed the House. I'm hearing right now that, Schumer's likely to call it for a vote, and it might only get like 10, 12, 13 Republican votes. And it just seems really foolish for us to try to hand that issue to the Democrats. I know there's some legitimate concerns about work requirements, about this turning into welfare, but if we hand this issue to the Democrats and they beat us over the head with it as we head into a campaign, we're going to get a much more welfare-heavy child tax credit in the future, right?
Yeah, similar to what Biden had as part of the his American Rescue Plan, yeah.
That's right.
Listen, this is like the dominant story here in Washington, D.C. today is we got an Easter recess looming. This is the day that it has to happen. Yeah. And I don't think other outlets are going to afford a sort of a legitimate, from the right perspective conversation about this thing throughout the day. So if you don't mind, Jon, do you mind sticking with us for one more segment? Because there's more to unpeel here, and I want to take issue with a couple of the positions you took there in your rationale, if you don't mind, because I know that you're a big boy and you can take it. And let's face it, this is the conversation that conservatives are having today about this thing, the real politic aspects of the negative repercussions if there is a so-called government shutdown versus the negative repercussions for allowing another giant spending bill, and then the perception from many voters thinking, oh, there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats. It's heads I win, tails you lose for Republicans in this thing, and it needs to be discussed so we all know what's really at play here. So we'll continue here with Jon Schweppe, American Principles Project, in literally a minute. But first, it's 6:15 WMAL. Traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the 5s, Jamie Wittens and the Hadid carpet cleaning traffic.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
When you're in love, call Mervis Diamond Importers. The world's best diamonds are at Mervis. Need a new roof? Go to longroofing.com. Get your free estimate today.
WMAL's Free Speech Forum is back Sunday, June 2nd at the Birchmere. Details online now at WMAL.com/Free Speech Forum.
And we continue with Jon Schweppe of American Principles Project. And real fast, Jon, because I don't want anyone to get a misperception. You suggested, it sounded like you suggested, that Chip Roy's opposition to this is so that he can get a nice number of Fox News hits in the background. There's surely more to Chip Roy's position on this bill than just making sure that he gets his media hits, right?
Yeah, this is just an ongoing, I think, Republican disagreement over is it worth standing on principle, or do we want to actually accomplish something? And look, I have a very strong opinion on that, and so that came across there. But I'll even point to this, Larry. I think we see this on the abortion issue sometimes, where you have folks in Congress who will never ever support even like a 16-week bill that Trump has proposed or is about to propose. because it's not good enough. And, the way I look at politics, you got to be willing to take incremental wins. And what we had here, I mean, I'm not happy with the bill.
I don't disagree with you. But let me jump in here because I'm glad you raised the abortion, because you're right. Listen, there's going to be some bills about abortion that Republicans, a pro-life Republican, doesn't like 100%. But if it helps move the ball down the field to protecting unborn children, they should vote for it and here's why. Because then they can go back to their voters in their district and say, it wasn't perfect, but this is what I did, and I was willing to stand up for you and fight that fight. I guess maybe what I'm saying is, what can Republicans go back to their voters right now in their district and tell them they did for them with regard to fiscal responsibility and standing in the way of the Democrats' agenda? Because you talk about the generic ballot. I think it's right now the generic ballot for many voters is reflecting the fact that people think that there is just a generic uniparty, and Republicans don't actually distinguish themselves in any way for standing up, as you mentioned, in the Tea Party, and actually, at the very least, letting voters know what they stand for. Because right now, if they don't stand with Chip Roy and maybe at least voice some opposition before eventually having to compromise, it looks like they're all on the same side.
Yeah, I'm very sympathetic to that. I mean, certainly, Larry, and you know this,
Yes.
Going back, I mean, how many times have we been in this exact situation? and our voters get frustrated with that, and I understand it. But what we have to explain, and I do think this is important, is look, we did get a few. It doesn't feel like it, but we did get a few wins. I mean, there's Hyde Amendment protections, there's things like that in there. But what we have to do is recognize we have a 2-seat majority in the House, and we don't have the Senate, and we don't have the presidency. And so if we want to make real change and actually cut spending and get rid of some of these crazy left-wing priorities that are in the bill, we just have to win elections. I sound like Mitch McConnell, and I hate it, Larry. I hate it. But this is just the reality here.
So, and all right. So I guess the question then is, when you go back to your district as a congressman and somebody stands up at a town hall and says, why did you agree to this? What's the correct answer? Because people in other congressional districts didn't vote for Republicans enough? Because we all joined together and got rid of George Santos? I mean, I just don't understand how you message this going forward. At this point...
Sorry, Larry.
Yeah.
I would point to the House appropriations process. I would say, look, we had this. I can affect this one chamber. And in this one chamber, this is what we fought for, and this is what we did, and this is the precedent we set for future spending. And next year, we're going to go back to the drawing board and do this again and have this fight again. But as long as we're in divided government, and especially as long as we're in a position where we have just zero leverage, we have to recognize that this is how it's going to work. If we shut down the government, if I voted against this bill, it's not going to change anything, and all it will do is I just think we have the evidence to point to that it'll make things worse politically, and then we will have nobody. And just imagine if Pelosi had the House here. Yeah. I mean, this would be a much worse bill, and it'd just be sail through.
But real fast on the politics thing, the last time we had a so-called government shutdown, Barack Obama, who is a much more gifted politician than Joe Biden is, he was the president, and he shut down the World War II memorial. He went out and deliberately put up barricades around an open-air memorial to try to get the image that, look at the Republicans, they're shutting down the World War II. Do you remember what happened, John? The next election after that so-called government shutdown, the Republicans won the Senate. So I'm sorry, I reject the notion that every time there's a so-called government shutdown, when Republicans stand firm on something and differentiate themselves from Democrats, that it actually always hurts them. Can't we maybe suggest that this could help them in the long run, especially when the guy who's leading the charge on the other side can barely put 3 words together?
I think it's a risk. I mean, I understand the idea of, showing voters that we're fighting and that,
not just fighting, but we actually stand for something. That's my, I keep coming back to that. What do we stand for when we go back and say, vote Republican?
That's a really good question, Larry. I mean, we have to do this eventually.
Yeah.
But, I just think I look at, I'm being practical here, but I just look at it. We are up on the generic ballot, Trump is in a position to win. We're 8 months from an election, and I'd rather have this fight next year.
Fight the
And I
fight
get where
once we
voters
have
are
the
at.
White House. You know what?
Yeah.
That's a fair. And I'm sorry, Patrice. I got very.
No. I mean, I think it's a good discussion that has to be had, right? And I think there's pragmatism and then there's purity, and sometimes pragmatism has to win out depending on the election cycle, the year, and where we're at. You know, John, I just think when it comes to bigger long-term spending. Do you see this bill as in any way attacking or even making nibbles at the heels of our national debt? Do we see it maybe keeping things status quo, or is it going to be making things a little bit worse?
Or just wait for the next fight.
Yeah, I can't sell. What's essentially a third, right? Like, I mean, the reality. What I can say is that. I think that this is probably the best we're going to get this year. That's my position on
Consider
this.
the turd polished.
Understandable. No, John. I mean, I agree
It's
with
true.
you. I actually think that sometimes you have to govern, and it's not always going to be a pure result, and everybody's not always going to be in agreement. But if it gets us to a place where we have more leverage. And not just short-term leverage, but longer-term leverage, like through winning elections and having larger majorities, then maybe it's a sacrifice worth making right now.
And John, it's probably the most honest take on the whole thing when all is said and done. And I appreciate you joining us from American Principles Project. And my only argument here is I would like to see a little fight, I guess, is all. We may end up here anyway, but why not a little fight? But I understand the potential downside of that too. John, thanks, man.
Thank
I
you so
appreciate
much,
it.
John.
Like John wanted to wake up at 6 a.m. to have to deal with this. This is the life you've chosen, sir.
Thank you.
It's 6:24.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:37. We're continuing on our long march through this Friday morning so we can get to the weekend. All right, you two just need to simmer down.
When Michael plays this intro music,
Yes.
this is the stuff that gets me going.
Get the funk on.
Telling you.
Patrice, Onwuka, you getting your funk on?
I got a little bit of funk in me.
All right, yeah, you do. And we like to bring it out whenever possible. Thank you for joining us this morning, and thank you to I'm Larry O'Connor alongside
Happy Friday,
Patrice
folks.
Onwuka. Patrice Funke Onwuka. Brenda Thiam is running for the 6th Congressional District. And first of all, I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but clear it up for us if I could.
That's always the first thing I have to do with people
Yes.
is help them understand how to pronounce my last name. It's pronounced Cham. Can you believe it?
Cham. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sure I can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So think Champ, but
Yeah.
drop the P. How about
Perfect. All right.
Okay.
But for those looking for the website, if you want to get more information about Brenda Thiam, you want to go to Brenda Thiam. That's how it's pronounced. And she is running for that Republican nomination in Maryland. Tell us about yourself.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. It's early in the morning. People working this time of the morning?
Well, we do.
So, yes, my name is Brenda Thiam, and I live here in Hagerstown with my husband and our 2 dogs and our daughter in college, former state delegate in the Maryland General Assembly. I served under Governor Hogan's tenure for a few years, and it was great work. I loved representing my constituents, so much so, and I saw that the seat was open. I thought, that looks like it'll be great. Let's do that. Let's run for Congress.
Mm.
You can do it, Brenda. So here I am. No more shouting at the TV.
You're right. No,
you go.
no more firing off an angry comment on a Facebook page. You're actually going to do
Brenda,
something.
TV doesn't work.
Excellent.
Get out and be a part of the solution.
Well, that's right. Now, Brenda, talk to us about some of the issues that you see are going to be top for voters in Maryland 6.
Mm-hmm. I've had many conversations with people as I'm out door knocking or at the grocery store, at the gas pump. Can you believe it?
Mm.
The price of gas, how much it costs to fill up our gas tanks. People are really struggling now, and not just Republicans, Democrats. This economy, Bidenomics, is crossing people, is crossing races, is crossing political parties. If you're saying you're doing better now versus 4 years ago, I'm not sure, what you have going on, because most people are having hard time.
I've looked at your page to show the issues that you care most about, and it's no surprise that education is number one because you are a special education teacher. You've been in the middle of it, and you see exactly what's wrong with education in Maryland and, frankly, in this country. And I know that that resonates with the people of the 6th District because we've talked about the problems at the Frederick County School Board as well as the Montgomery County School Board. I want you to be specific, if you could, from the federal level as a member of Congress. What can, should, or would you do to fix the problems for parents in your district?
Right. And to be 100% transparent, the federal government, sometimes we're a bit overreaching. We overreach too much in those matters. That can maybe go back to the states and go back even to the local school districts.
By the way, that's a great answer. If you say, I want to go to D.C. to fix education by getting D.C. out of the business of education, I love that.
Yes, that's what we need to do. School districts, local boards of education know what's best for their communities. At the state level, sometimes they've got to pull the reins on them. Sometimes they're going too far currently with some of the legislation that they're pushing out at the state level over in Annapolis. So as far as at the congressional level, I don't want to do too much. And I think it's a great idea. We've got to pull back some of that power from the Department of Education, seriously revamp what they're doing there, maybe even, shall I say, shut them down. Do we really need all that federal oversight of our local schools?
Brenda, another issue that I think is it's national but also local. It's crime, and then let's pair that hand in hand with immigration because we're increasingly seeing, because of the open border, that our crime is getting worse in this area. Can you talk to us about your view on crime and law enforcement? And I'm looking at your bio, and it seems like you have a family member who served in law enforcement.
Yes, my dad, many years ago, God bless him, he's no longer with us. He passed away in 2006. Lived in Memphis, Tennessee. He served with Shelby County as a sheriff deputy. And I remember the stories that he would share with us jokingly, but I'm sure very seriously, about those knuckleheads who just don't want to follow the law. He worked the fugitive unit on third shift in Shelby County, one of the toughest counties in America, in Memphis. And I have a high respect for my dad and also my brother who serves in law enforcement for Homeland Security. Even here at the local level, we are being impacted with murders and people committing egregious crimes. We have to support our law enforcement. At the end of the day, we know that now. We cannot defund the police.
Yeah.
We need them. Crime is increasing. We've got to support them. Now, if there are any bad ones out there not doing their job, which I'm sure that's in every profession, bad teachers, bad doctors, bad lawyers, then we deal with them one-on-one. But we can't lump them all in the barrel and say all law enforcement are horrible.
We're speaking with Brenda Thiam. Sorry for stepping on you there. Her last name is spelled Thiam, by the way, if you're looking for more information on the web. She's running for the Republican nomination in the 6th Congressional District. You happen to be calling in to tell us about yourself on a day where all eyes are on Congress. You mention often on your website about our growing debt and how it's our grandchildren's debt that they're now inheriting, that we have to get federal spending under control. Well, this is a good hypothetical. If you were in Congress today as a representative of the 6th District, what would you do with this bill that just got handed to you at 2:30 in the morning last night?
Oh, my goodness. I stay on top of reading and just learn of that information just yesterday. Another $1 trillion added to our debt. That pushes us up to now to $35 trillion, 1,000-page bill. I mean, my friends in the legislature used to tease me because I read every bill before I voted on it.
Yeah. Well, and Ms. Thiam, you know how this works. You're going to get an email from the whip or maybe even from the speaker saying, Brenda, you may be against this, but I need your vote. And you're a freshman. You better show up and vote for this thing. And you know the repercussions if you defy leadership. What do you do?
My constituents want me. That's the leading language there. My constituents would like for me to. That's who we're working for. I'm not there to work for Brenda. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
there to work for those things that are of interest to me. I'm there to work for and be a voice for people in my district. My district, my constituents would like me to. That's what we have to answer to.
Great.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. You know, Brenda, we didn't lead with this question or even mention this about you, but you were a Black Republican. And I'm going to end.
I'm sorry, Patrice, that doesn't exist. That's impossible. What are
right.
you talking about?
and like me, we are both Black women who are conservatives and we're Republicans. And I'm literally on another screen looking at the number of Black women, Black men who are leaving the Democratic Party and particularly not supporting President Biden. Talk to us about what you're seeing and why you think this is happening. Why now?
You know, as I said earlier when we started, I think people are waking up. The economy is devastating. The border, what's happening at the border is mayhem. It's chaos. It's like people are just coming through, and people are waking up. People are starting to witness and identify, as long as you're not living under a rock, that, wow, okay, maybe the Democrat Party really, you know, not that one party has all the solutions. You know, it takes all of us coming together with common sense legislation. But people are really seeing that this isn't working. Biden and his administration are driving our country in a ditch, and people are paying attention, and they're finally waking up.
By the way, I mean, you talk about a dangerous, dangerous individual. She is a woman. She is Black. She's a Republican. And I'm seeing a picture of Brenda Thiam right now in Annapolis at a Moms for Liberty rally.
Oh,
Brenda,
boy.
you are public enemy number one for the Democrats. You watch your back, all right? Keep your head on a swivel.
I love pushing the envelope. We've got to be bold now. We've got to be bold. They want to shove us in a corner. They want to silence us, but we can't be silent anymore.
Brenda, I love it. I love your perspective. And no matter what happens in the primary, you stay involved. You stay plugged in because we need your voice very much. Thanks for being with us
Thank you for
today.
joining us.
Thank you, guys. God bless you.